Hello and welcome back to Ave Imperator Productions. I'm your host Sulla, and today we're going to continue our talk about the Byzantine Empire from the death of Justinian to the rise of Heraclius. So, while Phocas is attacking faraway enemies with little to gain, he is also greatly persecuting his own people, not even necessarily for religious or political reasons, just because he is very afraid and he wants to keep himself in power. He understood how he rose to the position he was in, and he did not want someone else to use that same avenue to accrue the same level of prestige. There was a great storm coming for the Byzantine Empire, and everything was looking extremely gloomy, except for in one faraway province. That was Africa. Africa had lots of trade ships that were still plying the Mediterranean, looking for new ports and new places to sell their wares. It was well governed because it was far off, and their leader, Heraclius the Elder, had a very good grasp on what it took to rule and manage a nation. This was so true that the Senate of the Byzantine Empire sent a letter to Heraclius the Elder himself and said, "Hey, you wanna start a civil war maybe? We don't like Phocas, he is ruining the empire. Please lead an army into Byzantium and reclaim Constantinople." This was a serious letter. This was the rich and the powerful elite who Phocas needed in order to keep his kingdom under control, crying out to a third party and asking them, literally, to begin a civil war, which is not generally how civil wars are started. If you look at it through time, it's not usually the legislative body of the nation asking someone else to come in and just go to town. But this was a very interesting opportunity for Heraclius. Heraclius the Elder, as I keep saying because there will be two, just a second here, was elder. He was quite old. He enjoyed his province, he enjoyed his life. He did not want to throw all of that away for a potentially fatal war, which could see him lose everything. So he took the letter and he gave it to his son, Heraclius the Younger, soon to be Emperor Heraclius. He read over the letter a few times, and then he disembarked with some ships up the Mediterranean coast over to Constantinople. Phocas was not only desperately losing his war against the Persians in the east, he had started a fresh persecution and was literally butchering people in the streets of Constantinople. There was nowhere that was safe. And when Heraclius arrived, he stepped off of these glorious imperial ships, and he was in full imperial armor shining in the sunlight. And the people looked at him, and they saw something that in their mind sort of clicked. And it's very interesting, because a lot of what Heraclius did was based on the conventions of the people and appealing to a very deep side of them. This emergence of a fully grown emperor in full regalia who was ready to lead into victory was quite reminiscent of Athena herself, springing from the head of Zeus, fully clothed in godly armor, you could say, and ready to dispense the knowledge of wisdom and warfare to her patrons. This entrance was actually so successful that when the people saw him and saw that he was coming to the capital to make himself king, it became a very short civil war. The people actually rose up, ran into the palace in Constantinople, grabbed Phocas, and led him out into the streets, and just as he had done to so many hundreds if not thousands of his own citizens, they butchered him right there. They then led Heraclius, now Emperor Heraclius, into the imperial capital. It was a very uplifting and yet a very gloomy moment. Heraclius knew what needed to be done. he had to completely reform the empire in the vein of what Maurice had been trying to do, but now there was fewer resources, there was fewer people, everything was very grim, the empire was on the brink of destruction. So, Heraclius gave the people two options. Option 1, we go back to Africa, we make a new capital at Carthage, and you just forget about this whole Byzantine Empire thing, it's not gonna last anyways. They weren't interested in it, they wanted their own interests that were served at every second. They didn't really care about the long-term interest of the empire, so why not just leave it? The people became very upset at this. They loved their city, they loved their nation. They did not want to see it collapse. Once he had gotten the crowds to come to this conclusion themselves, he said, okay, this is going to be very difficult. It was around 610, and the Persian War would be over around 625, 628, somewhere right in there. For the first 10 years of Heraclius's reign, the emperor stayed cloistered in the capital of Constantinople. There would be parties from the Persians that would go and completely start ravaging Syria and Palestine. They actually sacked Egypt. This was the first time that the bread shipments would no longer be delivered, and it was also the last time that Egypt would be considered a part of the Byzantine sphere. This is why it was so important that the Slavs did not take over all of the good farming land in the Balkans, because if they had, then there would have been nothing left, and after the sack of Egypt, Byzantium would have starved. So after his military and bureaucratic reforms were done, the Persians were knocking at the doors across the Bosporus, trying to already siege the city of Constantinople, and the Slavs were running wild and attacking people in the Balkans themselves. Heraclius needed one more thing. He needed some money to get this war really going. Unfortunately, all of that was exhausted since it had all been spent on the average people, and the average people had all spent it on frivolous things, and now there was nothing. Except there was one thing. The city of Jerusalem was a part of the Byzantine Empire. It had been furiously sacked by the Persians during these Persian wars. They came in and they killed every single man, and they enslaved every single woman and child. They probably killed some of them too, but the overall goal was enslavement. So this was a huge affront to all of the holy sees of the Byzantine Empire. They still had some wealth from their tithes and from their collections of art and other objects, and the emperor came to them and said, we need to push these guys back, we need to reclaim Jerusalem, we need to reclaim our spot in the sun. Is there anything that the Patriarch of Constantinople can do? And in this one time, there happened to be. He gave him a large grant of all of the money that all four of the Holy Sees actually had, and gave it directly to the capital, which was used to raise a new army along the Mauritian Tagmata standards. This, in about 622 AD, was now the time for the push and the end of the final war between Byzantium and Persia, which had been raging since Byzantium was still known as the Roman Empire. Heraclius struck out. He marched straight into the Caucasus, which was actually where Zoroastrianism had been founded, and he attacked their equivalent of Jerusalem in the Caucasus and inflicted great damage and attacked the morale, if not just the physical assets of the enemy. This dealt a twofold blow, because when the Zoroastrians had attacked the capital Jerusalem of the religious centers of Byzantium, they showed the average person that maybe your religion is wrong since this other one is winning. This restored the morale of his own men, and it pushed the tides towards his opponents. He actually took his wife and his children with him to make sure that he sat there and he won this battle, because if he didn't, everything would be over for everyone that he loved. And at this moment, the king of Persia, however you want to declare his title, he won't be around much longer, Khusros, decided to send his greatest general with his greatest army against the Byzantine commander, and also asked the Slavs to invade and siege Constantinople. Heraclius already had an idea of what he wanted to do. He wanted to attack the capital of Persia, Ctesiphon. But now, he had 3 problems. He had the siege of Constantinople to deal with. He had a massive army led by the most able commander of the Persian forces, and he needed to take the war to the Persians in order for any of this to be for anything, really. He split his force, which was brand new and which had only had a couple of victories and was barely funded, into 3 parts. The smallest part he sent back to Constantinople, and it would be sieged for a few years, while these small amount of soldiers constantly scrambled around the Great Walls and would eventually see these invaders, the Slavs, off, destroying their siege machines, holding off their advances, and keeping the water open for trade to deliver supplies. The second, which was the sort of middle-sized army, went after the great army of Persia. And the third, led by Heraclius himself, went to Ctesiphon. The Byzantine army was successful in the defense of Constantinople. It was successful in the attack against the Persian commander, which, by the way, Khusros had told this commander if he lost that he would publicly beat him to death. And this commander, after losing the battle against the Byzantines, killed himself. So Khusros had a messenger go and take his body, stuff it with salt, and bring it back to the capital, and then publicly whipped it. This was a very bad guy. He also sent a dress to a general one time who had lost a battle because he said that he would not be needing his sword any longer and he could trade it in for this dress, and that guy actually led a civil war against him, so he was a bad dude. And the final battle, led by Heraclius, was in the plains of Nineveh, just north of Ctesiphon. The Persian army was defeated in all 3 fronts. The son of Khusros rose up and killed his father and declared peace with the Byzantines, and the works of Heraclius had been done. Unfortunately, this would not be for naught, but it would all come crashing down again and again and again and again. But next time we will go over the fall of Heraclius up to the rise of Leo III, which will be a very interesting look, but that's going to be a little while. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I really did. And next time we're going to be talking about the Middle Ages from a sort of different perspective, so I hope that you're looking forward to that. Alright, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. If you had any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments section. I address just about all of those. If you want to see more content like this, feel free to subscribe. But until next time, remember, Ave Imperator.